So then we didn't, then I had to feed it, but yeah. And so they come with them, and I'm like, hey, what's wrong here? But it's really such a bit to talk about. Take it back. No, we didn't. Did we wait? I'm like, before you finish, I asked her. We already told her. It was all her idea. It was all. And so I mean, my husband. So he said, I love it. I mean, it's wonderful. So I get to see over the teacher, Sandy. Waves. No, that's for you guys. Yeah, that's you guys. You guys get together.
Yeah, I'm on top of it.
Oh, Rachel, so nice to see you. How's it going? Pretty good. It's going well. Yeah. Yeah. Where you at these days? I'm still pictures of this. I know it's a little different.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
Hello, Aaron. You're in the same office. Well, what are you seeing today? We're just listening to 1220 to see what's going on the show. I hear what's coming out of the committee on that collaboration. We're here. Actually, friends that are very interested in those, that subject area. And here's, I don't know. That's fun. So you started that own business? Well, actually, I'm kind of, to extend between right now, I'm registered. That's what I'm absolutely. So you're listening.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah, I don't know. Got involved in something. Actually, quite a bit years ago, but not a real thing. So she was. But she has.
What is it?
So she's not able to testify. I'm not going to testify or anything.
Because there's no way now. So you said, I didn't know, but now I know. Hey, yeah, I'm just like.
Space, just kind of just wait and see what's going on. I mean, the office space, yeah, no.
Yeah, no, you're.
You know, I never. It's been, I mean, he has for years. Actually, I said that. And this week, but wow. You know, it's, well, my husband is a boss, you know, and I guess.
Hey, Mike. I just want to
What's going on? You guys stuff?
Really, you know, but
Oh. I got a case of McDonald's. God. 7, 8 years ago. It's an SEO. Gentle guy, okay? His daddy borrows his car, throws his keys in the glove box while he's doing liquor store down the building. Brings the car back to Baby Boy. Baby Boy goes back to the same car. Not last speed in the same car. He gets pulled over. So I don't know yet. So
Did they charge him?
they did.
I didn't think they were charged.
Before the amendment.
I got it.
You know how I'm good at that. and I keep, it's like, I gotta file that motion, I gotta file that motion, I gotta file that motion. So now I really gotta file that motion.
Not here. No, she's in the state last
Sure. Because, I mean, let's be real. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is they see you everywhere. They see you guys in neighborhood meetings. Jennifer, you know, she's doing a job. She's doing a job. I mean, she got a crazy public persona. She does it very well. So good, I'm glad.
Yeah. Oh.
My biggest fear.
Oh.
Steve, that's fine.
Yeah, I can promise you. If that happens, aliens have taken over the body, and we will quickly fix that. Because that is not going to happen. All right? Not going to happen.
I just wasn't on something. I didn't even know.
And all of this behind.
No,
But I will tell you,
I'm gonna start food blogging and coffee shop.
supported that.
The key to that is whenever I get hurt, I'll just keep it open like this way. You probably shouldn't have the hours.
I mean, yeah.
Because the problem
And then the brush off.
now it's close to like 2 or something. And it's 9 o'clock.
so
You go to the break and cap it up with the filibuster.
I know.
I put you in this one, you
Maybe they have a contract the other day, you know, all right, maybe we don't need to
I catch all names.
So I thank you guys for being here.
I thought it was the company.
And
Oh, I thought it was group.
Ryan, there's, as I'm seeing prosecutors' favorites. You guys see
Seriously, you're like, you're done.
You can't use that. You just can't.
We were here last week. Hey, did you know?
Oh. See, this is why I think it's good. Because I'd always like my class. The issue with
I don't think so.
Where's that? No, like, what's it for?
Excuse me. Yeah, we're gonna do this.
That's the only thing I
Yeah, we're gonna address
let me tell you, I ain't never gonna be on your side.
Oh, so that's okay.
The Committee on Civil and Criminal Proceedings will come to order. Secretary, you can call the roll when you get started.
White. Andrews. Corona.
Present.
Corlew. Gardner.
Present.
Higdon.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Daniel. McGaw. Benton. Aye. Scope. Aye.
Quorum having been established, we will move forward. We'll move into executive session. I move that House Bill 1199 be voted to pass. Recall 1199, the vote we heard yesterday. It's basically creating a database with the clerk of the.
Are you doing 20-something? That's good.
I have an amendment, it ends in 01H. I would move for its adoption. If you recall, that basically the underlying bill creates a statewide database. One of the things, talking with the auditor's office, that kind of jumped out at me is that nowhere can somebody go to a government agency and figure out exactly how many municipal courts are out there. So this just basically requires municipal courts to report their existence. What this amendment does is change it from OSCA to the clerk of the Supreme Court to a house of the database. Is there any discussion on just the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, is this a word for word codification of Supreme Court Rule 37?
You're looking at the wrong amendment.
Yeah. You're looking at L, not A.
My amendment just changes it, who's going to hold the database. It's not OSCA, we're changing it to the clerk of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I renew my motion that House Amendment number 1 be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted House Amendment number 1. Representative Gardner.
Yes, I have an amendment in .01L. And this amendment basically, the Supreme Court set forth some guidelines in their Rule 37. This is just codifying into the statute.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Representative Minton, proceed.
So this, I mean, it's long. So this is, because you got to put it in 20,000 places. That's why it's so long?
Yeah. And this
Okay.
is what legislative research said is, to do it, so they don't know.
And I appreciate that, and I, as difficult as it can be to have bills or amendments that are very, very long, I absolutely agree with the idea that if we're gonna do it, we should do it every place that we need to. So this is just basically taking the same language from, what is that, Rule 37 something G, and putting it in all of the places in statute where it would be applicable.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, again, I move in a motion that House Committee Amendment number 2 be adopted. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please say no. Ayes have it, you have adopted House Committee Amendment number 2. Any further discussion on the underlying bill as amended? Seeing none, I renew the motion that House Bill 1199 as amended be voted to pass. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representatives Cornejo.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Andrews. Kelowna.
Aye.
Orlou.
Aye.
Gardner. Aye. Higdon.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
McDaniel.
Aye.
McGaw. Mitten.
Aye.
Piscopo.
Your vote of 10 ayes, 0 noes, you have voted House Bill 1199 as amended do pass. Moving on, I move that House Bill 1182 be voted do pass. As you recall, this is Representative Fitzwater's bill. Basically, with just Callaway County, basically allowed the presiding judge to able to appoint
Marshall.
Court Marshal, there you go. Any discussion on House Bill 1182? This is something that was also added as amendment on the House floor yesterday. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representatives Cornejo.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Andrews. Kelowna.
Aye.
Orlou.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Higdon.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
McDaniel.
Aye.
McGaw. Mitten.
Aye.
I voted 10 yes, 0 no. You have voted House Bill 1182 as due pass. Moving on, I move that House Bill 207 be voted due pass. As you recall, this was Representative Kirkman's bill that basically put into a statewide vote a ban on red light cameras. Any discussion? Now, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Cornejo.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Andrews.
That's the voters.
Kelowna. Orlou.
Aye.
Gardner. Aye. Higdon. Marshall.
Aye.
Daniel.
Aye.
McGaw. Mitten.
Aye.
Piscopo.
Your vote of 9 yes, 1 no. You have voted House Bill 207 do pass. Moving on, I move that House Bill 234 be voted do pass. As you recall, this is Representative Spencer's red light camera bill that we heard just yesterday. Any discussion on House Bill 234? If not, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Cornejo.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Andrews. Kelowna.
No.
Orlou.
Aye.
Gardner. Aye. Higdon.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
McDaniel.
Aye.
McGaw. Mitten.
No.
Piscopo.
I voted 8 yes, 2 no. You have voted House Bill 234 is due pass. Moving on, I move that House Bill 421 be voted due pass. As you recall, this was Representative Burleson's bill dealing with agreements with other states and being able to share driver information with other states. Any discussion? Seeing none, I renew my motion that House Bill 421 be voted due pass. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Cornejo. White.
Aye.
Andrews. Kelowna.
No.
Orlou.
Aye.
Gardner. No. Higdon.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
Daniel. McGaw. Mitten.
No.
Piscopo.
I voted 7 yes, 3 no. You have voted House Bill 421 due pass. Moving on, I move that House Bill 452 be voted due pass. As you recall, this is Representative English's bill dealing with red light cameras. Any discussion?
Is this the one that just says the signs? Okay.
That's correct. Just, they have to install a sign at the intersection. Further discussion? Seeing none, I renew my motion that House Bill 452 be voted to pass. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Cornejo.
Aye.
White. Andrews. Lona.
Aye.
Porlu.
Aye.
Gardner. Aye. Higgins.
Aye.
Marshall.
No.
McDaniel. McGaw. Benton.
Aye.
Visco.
A vote of 9 yes and 1 no, you have voted House Bill 452 is due pass. Moving on to House Bill 453. I move that House Bill 453 be voted due pass. As you recall, this was Representative English's second bill dealing with red light cameras that we heard just yesterday. Any discussion?
This is the one that you have to see the person. Yeah. Frontal image of the driver.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I renew my motion that House Bill 453 be voted due pass. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Cornejo.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Andrews. Lona.
You betcha.
Porlu.
Aye.
Gardner. No. Higgins.
Aye.
Marshall.
Not at all.
McDaniel. McGaw. Benton.
Aye.
Visco.
By a vote of 8 yes, 2 no, you have voted House Bill 453 is due pass. We will now move out of executive session. Start public hearing. We'll start with House Bill 407. Representative Webber, you can come forward and proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stephen Weber from the 46th District in Columbia, presenting Bill 407. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 407 is a version of the Missouri Non-Discrimination Act. It's a bill I've been carrying for the last 6 years and it's been filed before I was in the legislature. Simply put, what it does is it bans, makes it illegal to discriminate based on sexual orientation in things like housing, public accommodations, and employment. This bill amends the Missouri Human Rights Statute, which was a statute that was signed by Governor John Ashcroft, that currently prevents discrimination based on things like gender, age, race, color, and religion, and adds sexual orientation to that. I have several witnesses today, so I'll be relatively brief. There's 2 things I'd like to highlight. The first is that this is good economics. Economies of the future are going to be economies of inclusion. Communities that are successful are communities that are going to that retain, respect, and cultivate the skills and talents of all members of that community. We've had businesses that had moved jobs out of the state of Missouri, even this year, to other places citing the issue of diversity. We've had major corporations like Apple pen op-eds discussing the emphasis that they place on diversity when deciding, when making business decisions. We've seen companies like Angie's List make and change their plans for large strategic investments based on the way they perceive the inclusiveness of a community. Including people and valuing people is good economics, it's good business, and it's good for communities. We talk a lot about the business climate in the state. I think this bill is important to setting a tone that is the business climate is going to embrace in the 21st century. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the human component of this bill. Discrimination is wrong. It's unjust. When we find it, we should stop it. We should end it. When the state allows that, we should fix it. Everybody in this state has the right to be themselves and to be themselves without living in fear. Fear of losing their job because of who they are, fear of suddenly being denied access to a public service, public accommodation. Like a friend of mine who was recently kicked out of a cab based on his sexual orientation. While it's important for the economics, I don't want to lose sight of how this is important to individuals. This is simply the right thing to do. There is a lot of pain that surrounds this issue. And I think it's time that the state of Missouri stop condoning the infliction of that pain. And I've got some really great witnesses today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To inquire.
Go ahead with your inquiry.
I think Representative Weber, you're probably scratching your head thinking, good golly, I'm the sponsor. What are you going to ask me? You made a, one of your arguments dealt with Missouri employers losing some of the most talented applicants to states that have protections for LGBT folks.
Absolutely.
And Representative Weber, you and I have known each other. We got elected at the same time back in 2007. Been serving together since 2008. You know what my partner of 23 years does?
I should know this. I feel bad. I can't recall.
You know, he hires people for a living. He's a headhunter. And did you know that when he did that here in St. Louis, in my district, he worked for one of the Fortune 100 headhunting companies? You didn't know that, did you?
It's not.
And gentlemen, I bet I never told you how many times he would come home and say, you know, I just offered a job to somebody at Monsanto, or to somebody at Anheuser-Busch, or Emerson, or Ameren, or Laclede Gas, and I'm going on. And they asked me, well, you know, my partner's coming with me. Do you have any protections for those folks in Missouri? And the answer always was no. You know how many of those people actually accepted jobs here in Missouri?
I don't.
Zero. So I'm thank you for carrying this bill. Thank you for getting us a hearing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the business community testify so I can get their opinion on whether or not this is a good idea, whether it's good for business or whether it's bad for business. So again, thank you for your courage, Representative.
I appreciate it. We had a group of high school students from Columbia come down last week, and I asked them what they were planning on doing after they graduated. And those that were planning on leaving, I asked why they were planning on leaving. And a student who was talented enough to be selected in this group to come down here specifically stated that reason for me. He's leaving Missouri because he doesn't feel welcome here. And I think we should take notice of that.
Absolutely correct. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead and inquire, Representative McGough.
Representative, on the federal level, in regards to discrimination for protected classes, they have veteran status. Why are veterans not protected in Missouri from discrimination?
I don't know. We've actually tried to do that on the floor before, and we weren't recognized to do that. We've offered that. We've tried to offer that amendment, and I would certainly support that.
What about genetic information?
I don't know enough about that.
But your understanding on the federal level, individuals are protected based upon their genetic information.
I wasn't aware of that. It may be true. I don't know.
Would you be opposed to that as well, on your bill?
I would have to learn more about it. I'm not. It's the first I've heard of the subject.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please go ahead and call your first witness. I'd like to remind all the witnesses, please be sure to fill out a witness form and leave them on the desk. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and honorable members of the committee. My name is Kyle Picola. I'm a registered lobbyist for PROMO, which is Missouri's state-based lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender advocacy organization. As Rep. Weber said, this is truly a very simple bill. All it does is include sexual orientation and gender identity to the Human Rights Statute, which is an existing law. The sad truth is you can still be fired for being gay in Missouri. If you ask most people around, I've done it many times, I've done it to many businesses, we tell them, did you know that you can still be fired for being gay? They're shocked. They say, no, I thought that was already protected, but the sad truth is that it's not. There's a lot of support to add these protections here in Missouri. We have more than 80 faith leaders who have signed their support for this because of their faith. They want to support this. They think this should be fair. They think everyone should be treated how we all want to be treated. 19 states, hundreds of other cities across the country, 14 here in Missouri, all have these protections in place. Those cities are still standing. There isn't an uptick in lawsuits, anything like that. It's been good for those cities. I can speak for Kansas City. I live there. I can't speak for them, but I can speak from my experience. That city is thriving. I received a phone call from Visit KC just the other week from them saying, hey, we just wanted to check and see and make sure that we had these protections on the book. We had a convention call us wanting to confirm that, and we were able to say, yes, we do. In addition to that, the business community overwhelmingly supports this. 95% of Fortune 500 companies have these protections in place. Why? Because it's good business. Because when an employee feels welcomed, when an employee feels like they can be themselves, they thrive, and the business thrives with that. Also, last year, when we ran this bill, we had 500 businesses who signed their support for Mona. This year, we have over 1,000 all across the state who say sexual orientation and gender identity need to be included in the Human Rights Act. To kind of hit on the human point of this, just really quickly, not only does the business side of this sell itself, but I would like to elaborate a little bit on the human component. I had a couple come up to me this year who are afraid of where they live, that they could be evicted because they're a couple. They have a separate bedroom that they keep made up just in case their landlord comes to visit. Every time their landlord says he's going to make a visit, they have to rush home. They have to put a toothbrush and toothpaste and a comb in the second bathroom. They have to ruffle the bed in that second bedroom just to make sure that they are not outed and that they won't be kicked out. Living under that fear is tough. This bill would remove that fear for that couple. They wouldn't have to rush home just to ruffle the bed to make sure that they weren't kicked out. Missourians support this. The business community supports this. It's time for Missouri to support this. Promo urges you to support it, and I'm here to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Do you have any questions to witness? Representative Minton, you may proceed.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base on there are several political subdivisions or cities in the state of Missouri that already have that. I'm proud to say that Richmond Heights, my municipality, was one to pass it several years ago. And more importantly, I mean, the city of St. Louis has protections as well. And I think you mentioned that sort of the sky hasn't fallen in, but I'm curious again, are you aware of any sort of issues arising that? As far as I can tell, businesses are still coming to Richmond Heights and to the other cities in St. Louis County that have passed these ordinances. Businesses still interested in being in the city of St. Louis. And the convention thing was something that I also thought was very interesting to, because we have a good convention business in the city of St. Louis that certainly provides a lot of revenue to the state. And are you aware of any instances of folks that have said, we won't come to St. Louis because of those protections that are in place?
I can speak to the instance that I just talked about of that convention calling the tourism entity in Kansas City, making sure that we have that, because they were concerned that we did not. And like I said, we're able to tell them that absolutely we do. They were thrilled, and they remained in Kansas City. I come from KC. I know the gentleman from Kansas City can elaborate more about this, but business is thriving. Companies are thriving. Burns & McDonald is growing. They support Mona and business as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions for this witness? Anyone else in favor? House Bill 407.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and representatives. My name is Matt Gio. I'm here testifying in support of the bill on behalf of the Missouri Association Trial Attorneys. And I'm an employment lawyer by training, so I'm going to talk about the employment aspect of the bill just briefly. I practiced civil rights law, specifically employment discrimination, for about 20 years in St. Louis. And the issue of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity is a problem. It does occur. In the past probably 3 years, I've had 5 folks who have come and talked to me about discrimination they've experienced in the workplace. So it's not happening a lot, but it does occur and it does impact people's lives. Unfortunately, Representative Minton talked about there are municipal ordinances that prohibit this kind of discrimination. The problem is these ordinances are not the same thing as the Missouri Human Rights Act. The remedies are not the same. The folks that I talked to in the city of St. Louis, there is a municipal ordinance, but if you've been discriminated against, the only way that gets rectified is if the St. Louis Civil Rights Enforcement Agency wants to prosecute your case. Every other kind of discrimination, you get what's called a right to sue letter. And then if you talk to an attorney, that attorney believes there's discrimination, and you want to try and rectify that wrong, you can then go to court and file a lawsuit. With that St. Louis City ordinance, you don't have that option. And I just think that it's patently unjust. So just to sum up, this does occur. It's certainly not going to be a floodgate of potential charges or claims, but it does greatly affect people's lives. And I would urge that the committee support passage of this bill. And then I can answer any questions. Before Mr. Corona gets recognized, the representative, you asked a question about service members and genetic information. They are protected under federal statutes, USERRA and GINA, but those are federal statutes and those protections do exist.
Questions, witness? Reverend Plum, go ahead.
Thank you. In full disclosure, Matthew, you and I went to law school together, and you're a constituent, so thank you for coming down. Can you highlight for the committee the differences between the present remedies? In other words, under the present Missouri Human Rights Act, if you're fired, let's say for your gender, you have certain remedies. Today, if you're fired because of your sexual orientation, let's say in the city of St. Louis, which has protections for LGBT folks, what are those remedies? Can you compare and contrast those?
Well, the remedies are the same. The problem is getting to protecting those rights and seeking those remedies. You don't have the ability as a private litigant to hire an attorney and go into court and prosecute that claim, because the only way it can be prosecuted in the city of St. Louis is if it's referred to the city councilor's office, and CREA believes there's a violation of statute.
Of state statute?
No, of the ordinance.
Okay.
So if CREA believes there's a violation of the ordinance, they could refer it to the city councilor's office, who could then choose to prosecute it or not. So I'm not really aware of any cases that the city councilor's office actually prosecuted a claim based on sexual orientation or gender identity.
But if I'm in Arnold, where I grew up, I don't have that option, do I?
I don't believe so. I don't think Arnold has passed such an ordinance.
Thank you.
McCall, go ahead.
Sir, do you think veterans and the genetic information, is that going to be added to this bill? Would you support that?
Well, I can say as a general matter, I think that protection for service members and protection for discrimination based on genetic information should be prohibited under the statute. I can't really speak to whether it should be added to this bill, but I certainly believe that those are important basis for protecting individuals.
Are there any other, anything else need to be added? Just your opinion as someone who's practicing this area of the law.
No, I think the two areas you've identified, the folks who've served, genetic information, I think are important. I think sexual orientation, gender identity is also very important. Not really anything that I count on a daily basis that I think would need to be added to the statute.
On the federal level, what all goes into the genetic issue?
Well, it works similar to any other kind of discrimination. You have to show that someone's
I
discriminated.
mean, like, my understanding of it is it was an effort not to, basically employers couldn't require someone to take like a genetic test to say they were predisposed to some type of illness or condition as a part of their employment. Is that your understanding?
Well, that's an aspect of it, yes. I think it's broader than that, but that's certainly an aspect of it. Yeah.
I haven't dug really deep into it. I just wanted to see what, on the federal level, I knew veterans were protected. And throughout all this, I've always thought, why isn't this like together, one bill trying to protect people who need to be protected? And so when I looked on the federal level, and I saw the genetic part, and I didn't dig into it as much. I didn't know. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but I appreciate your information.
You're welcome.
President Corley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gio, for your testimony. I was listening to the previous testimony and yours, and just trying to kind of get a scope of the issue that we're dealing with. Where do you practice law?
My office is in Tower Grove and South Grand in the city of St. Louis, but I practice all over the state.
Okay. And it was mentioned that 95% of the Fortune 500 companies have provisions and policies and diversity. I know in the company that I work for, we've won several awards for diversity initiatives, and the companies in Kansas City that I've dealt with, and it was mentioned, some of them here earlier, have these diversity programs and in place. And I guess my question from an attorney standpoint is, with the market really driving these businesses' decisions to make inclusive work environments, is there a need to have an extra liability in terms of possible court cases?
I think so, because I think businesses have spoken by passing these policies, and I think it'd be important for the state legislature to endorse that policy decision by our companies that believe it's important to attract and retain creative folks primarily who happen to be gay. And I think to have the protection under the state statute would say to people that are being recruited, like Representative Colonna mentioned, to know that if this policy happened to be violated, there's a way to enforce that violation. So I think that's really critical. I think it's very important.
Can you enforce now a violation of a workplace policy?
I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult because you have a policy, and the question then becomes, is that an enforceable contract between the employer and the employee? So can an employee say, the company had this non-discrimination policy, but they breached it? Can that employee bring a breach of contract claim against that employer for violating that policy? That's extremely difficult. And I don't want to get too technical with you, but it's potentially a breach of contract claim, and those are difficult for employees to bring against employers.
But it is possible with employment places that have policies to sue on the basis of that breach of a policy without a statute. Is that not correct?
I'm not sure. Is there some case law from the Missouri Supreme Court that talks about employee handbooks and policies? And I think for the most part, for those of us that represent employees, we haven't tried that avenue because it's so difficult to bring that kind of claim. It's very difficult to do. I'm not aware of any that have been successful.
How many clients have you had that have tried to bring such a claim?
Well, I haven't brought that theory because of the case law. I'm not sure it'd be successful. So I try and find some other way to help that person. That one is just such a difficult cause of action that I haven't even tried it, to be honest with you.
How many of your clients have come to you that wanted to sue based on workplace discrimination and sexual orientation that you have not been able to bring a claim?
I would say there's probably 5 to 7 in the last 3 or 4 years, and I probably talk to 120 to 140 people a year that have potential discrimination claims. And so it's not a high percentage of the folks that I talk to, but it does happen on an annual basis. I do see people that have suffered.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Currently a witness forum.
Yes.
Representative, would you like to call your next witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the committee. My name is Hart Nelson. I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Issues Management with the St. Louis Regional Chamber. We're the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development organization for the St. Louis region. We represent just over 1,000 member companies in Missouri and Illinois. Our chamber is committed to helping the region attract and retain a highly skilled and diverse workforce and fostering an inclusive business community. We also support policies that will strengthen the region's business climate by ensuring the rights and concerns of employers and employees are recognized and addressed. Therefore, the Chamber supports adding sexual orientation and gender identity to the list of protected classes in Missouri law, in conjunction with important employment law reforms to achieve fairness and balance that better protects both employees and employers. As the committee is aware, the economy in the United States is driven by talent. We've heard that today. We view the addition of these two protected classes under House Bill 407 as a pro-business measure, designed to ensure that Missouri remains competitive in attracting the best and brightest employees who will stay and work in our state for the long term. Our employers, both large and small, recognize the value of inclusiveness. As you've heard, over 95% of our Fortune 500 companies have policies similar to House Bill 407 in place already. And over 1,000 Missouri businesses support adding these protections to law, including Monsanto, Sprint, Pinnacle Entertainment, Brian Cave, Express Scripts, Polsonelli, Thompson Coburn, among others. Our members, who are St. Louis's employers, value these protections, and we ask that the committee pass House Bill 407 to ensure that our state is welcoming, inclusive, and economically competitive in the long term. While we fully support the addition of sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes, the Chamber remains concerned that Missouri's employment law uses a low standard for deciding cases under the Missouri Human Rights Act. We commend the House of Representatives for its passage of House Bill 1019, which we believe will resolve many of these concerns and bring Missouri's law in line with federal regulations and the laws in 48 other states. In an age when people, resources, and information are highly mobile, Missouri recognizes the need to be highly competitive to encourage growth, innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment. We must attract and retain the best talent and ensure that they experience a welcoming and productive work environment. We believe that House Bill 407 is a pro-business measure, and again ask the committee to pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, witness? Representative Clark, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, you and I have chatted, and pardon me for the blunt directness of this question, but, well, the issue is of a little bit of importance to me. I want to make if we were in court or if we were up on the floor, I would have objected and asked you, what on God's green earth does the standard for proving discrimination have to do with discriminating folks? But we're not in court, and we're not up on the floor, so I won't do that. The position of the Regional Chamber of Commerce is, if no other bill passes this legislative session, you are in 100% support of House Bill 407.
That's correct. And I will say that we are in support of House Bill 407. And if the other bill does not pass this session, we will do our very best to promote passage of that bill next.
And I have to thank you for that. I tease the chamber all the time. How come I don't get a chamber award? And it's like, oh wait, I don't support most of your stuff. I can support some of it. But then the follow-up question is, well, why can't y'all support some of my stuff? You know, and the fact that the regional chambers for the St. Louis metro area reflects the position of the largest employers in the state of Missouri is heartening. So thank you.
Thanks, Representative.
Thank you, gentlemen. I don't have my notes in front of me. Would you explain what HB 1019 was?
Sorry, 1019, sorry. It is basically does reforms to employment law that will actually create.
I'm at the point of order this. We're here to talk about discrimination and Missouri human rights statute, not the standard of review that the courts of Missouri have approved for folks to prove discrimination. If we want to go there this hearing, that's fine. I have another hour and a half to talk about it and inquire about it.
Point of order is not well taken. You may proceed.
The chamber supports employment law reform, Representative. And so basically what 1019 looks at is the caps on damages for employers based on the size of the company, as well as changing taking a look at motivating factor or a contributing factor, and that's in the language. And I apologize, I'm not an attorney, but basically our goal is for both of these bills to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Please be sure to file a witness form. My understanding that, hold on a second here. Hold on. My understanding that I had about 4 people testifying in support, I don't want to, how many people are going to testify in support? How many testify in opposition? Well, we're going to start alternating in case we run out of time. So I'm going to take somebody to testify in opposition to House Bill 407 right now. Sure, fill out a witness form and proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Jay Atkins. I am here today representing the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Appreciate the time to address committee today. We've had this discussion in years past. This is always a very personal subject to both sides, and I can't disagree with any of the testimony I've heard here today, but I will say that from the Missouri Chamber's perspective, as a matter of policy for businesses in the state, the Missouri Chamber does not oppose adding any additional classes to the Human Rights Act until we get the reforms in the employment law world that Mr. Nelson spoke to just a moment ago. So I'd like to go on record in opposition of this bill.
Thank you, Representative Hinkman. Proceed.
Thank you. It kind of shocks me, but what if I don't like people with blue eyes and I own a business? Came in to apply for my position and I go, no, sorry, I don't like blue eyes.
Right, and I don't right now believe that persons with blue eyes are a protected class in Missouri, and for the record, we would oppose adding them until we get the employment law reforms.
Yeah, but you're still discriminating. You know what I'm saying? And that was a ridiculous example, but that's how ridiculous things can get around here. And I don't understand why you would object to someone's private life.
Sure, and I'm gonna disagree with the premise of your question, Representative. I'm not here to testify that the chamber, or quite frankly anybody that I'm aware of, thinks discrimination is a good thing. But what I am saying is that there is a very serious policy discussion to be had that involves the employment law framework as it exists in Missouri today. And the position of the chamber is that those laws need to be reformed, and that we will oppose the addition of any classes, new protected classes, until those reforms are in place. I would also add that, as you've heard a lot of testimony, that a number of Missouri companies do have anti-discrimination policies within their own internal policies, and those policies include protections for LGBT people. I would note for the representative that the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry also has those protections in our own internal policies. I know because I wrote them. So to suggest that we're here to advocate for discrimination is offensive and untrue. But we are advocating for reforms to employment law.
Okay, well, I apologize for my offense. Unfortunately, that's the way it came across to me.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify.
Other questions, Representative Call?
So to reiterate, the policies of the chamber would be that you don't want to add veterans, my question, until things are changed in regards to other areas.
I appreciate that question, Representative, and for the record, I am actually a veteran of 2 branches of the armed service. I've spent 8 years serving in the military, and you're absolutely correct. I would offer the same testimony on that question, were this bill to add veterans to as a protected class under the Missouri Human Rights Act, until we address the necessary and fundamental necessary fixes to the fundamental flaws in the employment law statutes in Missouri. The chamber will oppose the addition of any new classes.
All right, thank you, Representative. Proceed.
Thank you. I got to tell you that I can't say how deeply disappointed that the chamber would use this bill as an opportunity to, as far as I'm concerned, and I think other members of in this room, to basically hijack a bill about discrimination to advocate for something else. I find that deeply disappointing. To say that you're for it, except for, basically what you're saying is, I'm for it only if I get mine. And I'm sorry, I understand that you said that that's offensive. It's offensive to me, frankly, to say that, to somehow say that you support anti-discrimination ordinances or that you're not supporting discrimination. It's a logical inconsistency to me.
Is there a question?
And yeah, which is, I mean, how can you justify that?
Well, Representative, I think to ignore the idea that these two issues go hand in hand is disingenuous.
Why should, and it comes back to the basic premise. Whatever the law is today is the law today. If you have problems with the law today, I can understand that. But to suggest, basically your testimony, and I don't see how it could be seen any other way. It suggests that because we don't like the law today, we're going to make sure that other folks are not able to avail themselves of existing law. And that in and of itself is discriminatory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Representative Corley, proceed.
Mr. Atkins, is in your work with businesses, you heard from businesses that the litigation and environment as it currently stands in Missouri is hostile towards businesses?
I have heard that, Representative, and in particular in the world of employment law discrimination, yes.
And have you nationally, when we talk about whether this is a place that's a fair place to do business, have you heard is there a problem nationally with the way the Missouri is perceived?
I think there is. I think that's fair. I do not believe that Missouri is seen as a friendly environment for businesses as it relates to our litigation environment.
Does that cut against us when the state is trying to attract jobs?
It does. It absolutely does.
And is it your concern that adding another protective class, whatever it may be, would cause more potential for liability and lawsuits under the current framework of the law?
Under the current framework, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Colonna.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. It dawned on me that in 7 years, this is the first time I've actually been on a committee where this bill's been heard, and we know each other rather well. I surprised myself by my last outburst, but so I'm going to try and do this in a professional way.
Appreciate that, Representative.
We get to go here now, since I wasn't going to, but we are anyway. I can't remember. I know Missouri's a horrible place to do business. Can you tell me in which of the past 7 years haven't we passed some type of tort reform? Or can you tell me in the past 7 years when we haven't passed some type of incentive for businesses to get more tax credits? And in fact, can you tell me in what time in the past couple of years we haven't passed incentives for businesses to hire veterans?
I think those are fair points, but I would respond.
So what years
I
have we not done that?
I don't know if there's been a year we have or have not done that, but I do also know that within those intervening years that we have also been faced with a number of court decisions that have been adverse to business interests that have required us to come back again and again to attempt to fix problems that we have already fixed.
And why is it that the chamber simply doesn't trust juries? Okay, and for folks in the audience out there, they keep hearing about this other bill that's not before us, but I'm gonna help them out a little bit. Missouri Chamber wants to change the standard on discrimination to say, well, you know what? If you're fired, if 49.9% of the reason why you're fired is because you're black, that's okay. I thought Missouri law, as it presently stated, says if you fire anyone because they're black, for whatever percentage of the reason, that's wrong. Why does the Missouri Chamber think it's okay to be racist 49.9% of the time? And why does the Missouri Chamber demand that we change that law to reflect that point of view before we can extend protection to classes that we know have been discriminated against? Why?
Well, I have a couple of answers. I would start by saying that I don't agree with that characterization of the Chamber's position, but that's I think you know that. That said, first.
Oh, and actually, Mr. Atkins, you're right. You're a lobbyist here representing the Chamber, and I'm asking you to help me understand the Chamber's point of view. I understand the regional Chamber's point of view, but I don't get the statewide Chamber.
Well, I think I answered that in my earlier testimony, but what I would tell you is I don't think that don't think it's fair to characterize the chamber as not trusting juries. I've tried 39 jury trials myself and have been in front of, spoken to a number of juries afterwards, and I've never once found a jury that I thought didn't take their obligations seriously. I have a tremendous amount of respect for our jury system, and in particular the way juries handle themselves in Missouri. I've seen it firsthand. Secondly, though, your question does ignore the idea that there is a separate framework that works in a number of other jurisdictions to address the issue of racism. And you know that I'm referring in large part to, Title VII, 1964 Civil Rights Act, and the cases coming down from the Supreme Court that interpret that. And the other bill that is not an issue here today incorporates those changes in Missouri, and a number of other states have done that. I understand that there's disagreement about how well one system works versus the other. From a business perspective, I would tell you that the Chamber's position is that the derivatives of the Title VII 1964 Act creates a more equal playing field in the courts for employers, and that's what we'd like to see.
Let me just rephrase real quick so that when I do my legislative update, I can make sure I get it. So truthfully, Missouri provides arguably greater protection against discrimination in employment than 48 other states in the federal government. Is that an accurate assessment of the standard that's going on across the country?
That's not how I would characterize it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, please be sure to file the witness form.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Testimony in support of House Bill 407. Proceed when ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Beats. I'm an attorney in private practice. I've practiced throughout the state of Missouri for the past 30 years. When I was an undergraduate, I was president of the student body, and I offered a motion that the University of Missouri should recognize a group called Gay Liberation. Board of Curators later chose not to do that, and that was challenged. That decision was challenged. That case went to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court ordered the University of Missouri to recognize Gay Liberation. That case became a textbook case, and when I went to law school, that case was literally in our constitutional rights textbook. Not a badge of honor for the University of Missouri that they took that position and fought that issue to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think it is clear that the verdict of history is going to be that this legislation should be passed. The City of Columbia, I'm also proud to say I was first chair of the Human Rights Commission in the City of Columbia. We urged the City Council, and the City Council did become one of the first cities in the state of Missouri to adopt legislation of a similar nature, but necessarily because it's a municipal ordinance, it's of a limited application. We need a state law. We need these amendments to be made to the state human rights statutes. It is absolutely clear to the majority of the American public, and I believe a majority of the Missouri citizens and voters support this legislation. I hope you will do so as well. It's clear that the verdict of history is going to be that this legislation should be passed.
Thank you. Just to be clear, because I know you've testified for different organizations and associations, are you here individually or?
I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Civil Liberties Association, a volunteer group of citizens concerned with civil liberties and civil rights based in Missouri.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Please be sure to follow witness. Testimony in opposition to House Bill 407. And proceed when ready.
Mr. Chairman, committee, for the record, Kerry Messer with Missouri Family Network and the Missouri Baptist Convention. It's obvious that the supporters of this bill have.
Don't believe your microphone's on.
I apologize. It seems clear that the supporters of this bill have decided on a strategy to talk about how this bill is good economics. And I think they make the point very well. 95% of Fortune 500 companies, including some of the largest employers in the state of Missouri, taking this on voluntarily in their boardrooms is, in my mind, quite evident that the free market is working very well. And the advocacy that the communities engaged in these advocacies are doing a good job at selling their ideas to the marketplace on a voluntary basis. And our culture is experiencing a very healthy and forward-moving, progressive, and evolving culture. So the question comes to my mind, so who in the world and why is this bill before us? Who is it targeted at? It seems to me that it's targeted at those individuals who are small business owners, those families that have a piece of rental property that are just making a tiny bit of extra income by renting that property. And basically what this bill is doing is forcing these particular people then to violate their personal conscience, violate the free market. And then this bill also erodes, restricts the foundation stone of our entire constitutional body of inalienable rights and freedoms, and that is religious liberty. All based on a subjective standard that the supposed violator would have absolutely no idea they committed a violation until they get hit with a lawsuit. The standards put forward in this bill do not pass any of the tests that we have always used to put a protected class into the civil rights laws. The only exception to the standards that are already there is the one standard that gave us our Constitution in the first place, and that's religious liberty. You can't look at someone and tell them, or tell in your own mind, what their religious convictions are. But everything else in civil law, in civil rights law, is based on those immutable characteristics and the other standards that we have before us. This bill violates all of the standards we've ever had for adding classes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Testimony in support, House Bill 407. Proceed when ready.
Jennifer Durham, and I'm here for Express Scripts Holding Company. We have a policy that we've had in place for years, non-discrimination for sexual orientation. And we just think this is a great bill and we support it.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Testimony in opposition. Proceed when ready.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri. For the reasons that you heard earlier, we're establishing a new protected class, which brings a new line of lawsuits against employers. That's the reason why we oppose it. We believe that employers should be free to have policies if they wish, but policies are one thing, lines of lawsuits are another. And putting this in the law and inviting a new line of lawsuits is something that we cannot support. We have to answer questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Testimony in support.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bill Gamble. I'm a registered lobbyist appearing on behalf of the city of Kansas City. We'd like to go on record in support of the bill. Yes, we do have an ordinance. The ordinance worked very well. Kansas City has many strengths, and one of our strengths is the diversity that we have within our city. And we're proud to support the bill, and we're proud that we have our ordinance on the books.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, please be sure to file a witness form. Testimony in opposition. Proceed when ready.
Members of the committee, I'm Bev Allen with Concerned Women for America, Missouri, testifying against House Bill 407. As Terry so eloquently mentioned, that it's a hard testimony here, but we do have a problem in the room, and I don't know if it's a discrimination problem against sexual orientation. It was mentioned that one of these, well, I think it was Representative Cullen as part who has offered jobs to individuals across the country who did not want to come to Missouri because of our not having the non-discrimination clause in our statewide policy. Who's discriminating here? Is it the person who was offered the job and did not want to come to Missouri? Was he discriminating against Missouri? We don't have a problem. He was offered a job. He or she did not want to have the job. So I don't know if that's a problem. As been stated, we already have 95% of the companies in Missouri that have adopted the policies. Free market is at work. It will work. We got to let it expand. You'd be amazed to allow free market to work in all areas of life here in Missouri, and this would be one of them. And I could go on, but I think I'll just stop there.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Testimony in support.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tricia Workman here today representing Monsanto. As most of you know, we're not often in front of the legislature asking you to pass some sort of mandate, but we believe the passage of this bill is imperative to building an inclusive and strong state and an inclusive and strong workforce. This should be a state policy, not just an individual business decision or policy. I will leave the committee with a release from Monsanto about our decision to sign on to the Human Rights Campaign Equality Pledge and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Please be sure to fill out a witness form. Testimony in opposition. Now back to testimony in support.
Opposition.
Opposition. Proceed when ready.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Ron Calzone. I'm a Marys County rancher, businessman, and also one of the directors of Missouri First, a think tank, a constitutional think tank. And I want to give you some perspective of a business owner and employer of 35 years. I appreciate the fact that we've got some private industry here explaining that the free market system is working, like the last witness you saw. And I agree with the previous testimony in opposition that we should continue to let the free market work as it is. I want to point out, though, that with some small businesses like mine, if I were forced to hire a certain type of employee, might be who knows what, it's very possible that I have other employees that would decide to leave me. And so I think that you've got to ask the question, what are the unseen effects of doing something like this? Is Missouri really an inclusive state if Missouri's going to, government and statute is going to dictate who we can associate with? America's fundamental principles include freedom of association. And we have, and you know, everyone's afraid to say this, so I'm going to say it. In America, you have a right to discriminate as a private citizen. In America, if you don't like the color of someone's eyes or their hair or the way they talk, you have a right to not associate with them. That's fundamental. We're afraid to say that now, but it's the truth. Government doesn't have a right to discriminate. And so I would support something that said that government couldn't discriminate based on certain things. But let individuals decide with whom they want to associate. It's a fundamental American right. It's the same right that allows someone to be gay or lesbian.
All right, thank you very much. How many employees does your business employ?
We've employed anywhere from just a handful to 18 or 20.
How many does that have right now?
We have about 6 right now.
You realize that you employed 5, this bill will not apply.
It's immaterial. You know, that's one of the reasons that
we're talking about the bill. It's very material.
Well, the reason that I would suggest that it's immaterial to my opposition to the bill. If, for instance, I had 4 or 5 employees, and I knew that 2 or 3 of those employees said, if you hire someone who is whatever they are, I'm going to leave. That would be disincentive for me to hire that 5th or 6th employee. So what are the unseen consequences? You know, we know from the testimony that you've seen so far that the free market's working. Some of the largest employers in the state, I think, again, as I think Mr. Messer pointed out, the lobby for the gay and lesbian community has been very effective. They've made some great inroads in those corporations. Let them continue to work that way. Don't pass statutes that violate fundamental American principles of freedom of association.
Thank you very much. Further questions?
I think Representative Colonna had a question for me. I would be very disappointed if we didn't engage.
Representative Colonna, proceed.
I'll just be brief. I want to make sure I understand your testimony. So you also want the freedom to discriminate against African Americans in employment?
I think that I have the God-given freedom to discriminate as a private individual against anyone for any reason I want to.
Okay. You mentioned.
I don't think government does.
How about, did you say you did ranching?
Yes.
You know where I'm going with this. You take tax deductions for anything, ranching? Aid?
I don't take any tax credits.
The subsidy that we do for antibiotics?
No.
You know, the cow bill of rights?
None, 0. And I never have.
So on your taxes, you don't use any deductions that are authorized by the government for the operation of your cattle business?
I take normal business expenses that are available to everyone.
Okay, so then you're receiving welfare, that's fine. Don't you think when you're receiving
welfare?
Well,
That's a mischaracterization. When you offer a subsidy to someone, that's welfare. When someone is calculating based on law what income is, you can of course deduct your expenses. Income is the difference between that which you bring in and that with the expenses associated with bringing that in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Testimony in support. Proceed when ready.
Greetings, I am Reverend Michael Stevens, asked to come and support as a person of faith. My father was a Southern Baptist minister here in Missouri. I have my master's degree from a United Methodist seminary. I am ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and been a pastor for about 27 years. For the last 13 years, I've been the pastor of Southwood United Church of Christ in Raytown, Missouri. We're just a couple miles south of the home of the American League champions and currently undefeated Kansas City Royals.
Hey.
My wife and I.
Order.
My wife and I have been on a long journey of faith to get to the point to where we are now. Southwood United Church of Christ is what we call an open and affirming congregation that fully welcomes gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgendered people into the life of our congregation. That journey began for us when we just said we wanted to be followers of Jesus who spent time with anyone and everyone. Those who reflected what he wanted out of life, those who didn't reflect out of what he wanted in life, but he sat with them at table, embraced them in a variety of different ways. The big jump for me came in a similar way as in Acts 10 and 11 it did for Peter, who didn't want to go see the Gentiles. He thought that they were abhorrent to God and didn't want to spend time with them, but God drove him there. He preached the gospel and he was like, wow, the Spirit fell on them. Who am I to say no? And the same thing happened to me in my own ministry, preaching and spending time with gay and lesbian individuals and families and seeing the Holy Spirit moving in them in very powerful ways. And so that instructed my ministry in a variety of different ways. And I know that there are others of faith that are at a different point in their own journeys. Our whole culture is in the midst of a huge change in a variety of ways. I know there's some who say that they have a business and they bake wedding cakes and they don't want to bake wedding cakes for gay couples. I don't know exactly what to say to them except for I'm a proud American and Missourian, and I believe that we are called to respect the human dignity of all persons. I guess a baker could, if they wanted to, start putting on their business cards or on their cake boxes homophobic stuff if they wanted to, but I don't think that would be good business practice, and I don't think it would be good politics practice because the world is changing quickly. 30 years ago, I got to see at environment in which we called things gay, and that we called things gay, we called people gay, and it was a derogatory slur. This year, my boy-girl twins are seniors in high school in Lee Summit, and they got to see the Royals play in the Game 7 of the World Series, but they've grown up in an entirely different environment. They have grown up in an environment in which they have friends who are out in school that are embraced completely as a part of their circle of friends and are loved. The world is changing, and my kids and their friends are just appalled that I even have to come here and speak on behalf of something that respects the dignity of fellow Americans, fellow people. And so I encourage you to support this bill.
Thank you. Any questions?
You know, I'm sitting here listening and trying to get a grasp on everything, and I just dawned on me that I've walked into the stores. In the store or at the door, it says, "We reserve the right to refuse to serve anyone." Would this impact that?
I can address that. Yeah, it would. So you have the right in Missouri to refuse service to anyone so long as they're not in one of those protected categories. And those protected categories are currently outlined on page 2 of your bill. And so by adding sexual orientation to one of those protected categories, that would add to those characteristics that you are not allowed to discriminate on. So you're allowed to discriminate on anything else except for those things that are in these protected categories.
Okay. So I guess that what we would be doing is saying that if you're a baker and you decide that you want to exercise your right not to sell your wedding cake to a gay couple, that we would say, tough, too bad, you have to do it. So we're actually imposing our will on the free will of people that want to say no.
I would say
These are just questions, not necessarily my opinion.
Right, I would say any private individual has the right to make their own decisions. When a business or entity enters, in the legal terms, the stream of commerce, you have to play by the rules of the stream of commerce. And so just like we say, you can't say that we're not going to serve black people, which is something that was done in America for many, many years. Just like you say, we're not going to employ an Irish person, which was done for many, many years. Once you enter the stream of commerce, the state has the ability to say that you can't discriminate based on these protected classes. And so yes, we would be adding that to those protected classes.
Thank you. Further questions, Representative Andrews, proceed.
Clark. How does this, would this affect gender identity? Say in the case of, my daughter is a freshman at a university, and in a situation where there was a gender identity situation where there was a, where she would be then, would she be mandated then to live in a dorm with a male who is stating gender identity?
Partly because it's university, I don't know the answer to the question. I think it would probably depend on the type of university and the intricate details. We have core systems to address those very specific questions, and that's what we would have to do.
But you don't know how this would apply. I mean, if how this bill would affect that. I mean, I would hate to pass a bill and then come to find out that, you know, that we have just opened up a can of worms.
Yeah, I understand your concern. Many states have passed this. Many communities have passed this. So it's not opening up a can of worms. It's something that I don't know the number, but a significant number of states have passed. I know at the University of Missouri, they've got a whole dorm that's dedicated. They're building one dedicated just on that issue. So I don't know that university. I don't know how it would play with the public. It's a public institution. It's a private institution. Those things would all have to matter on the legal case, and so I can't speculate on that specific situation.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Again, just real quickly, any opposition? Seeing none, testimony in support. Proceed when ready.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan speaking on behalf of Missouri National Education Association. The first thing I want to do is just thank the chair and the committee for allowing for there to be full time to be spent on this very important issue. We think we would completely concur with Dan Beat's previous witness who said, really, we think that history will be on the side of this. This is an important move forward. We think it's important for our students. We think it's important for our schools. We think it's important for the future of Missouri. We're very strongly committed that bullying and harassment of students in the schools is wrong and unacceptable. And we strive to create resilient and inclusive school communities where that's really not something that is fostered, and where the problems arise, we heal, we intervene. Similarly, we think that bullying, harassment, and discrimination in that workplace, we try to strive to create professional learning communities. That kind of inclusive, healthy workplace is best for us to work together and fully support the students. And so we think that this policy, we strongly support including sexual orientation and gender identity as protected categories in the Missouri Human Rights Act as it relates to employment in the workplace, because we think that is best for the kind of workplace and the kind of schools we want to create. It also sends that message of kind of reinforcing that kind of inclusiveness to our students, and it sends that message not only about the work we're doing in the schools they're in right now, but it sends that message about the state that Missouri is going to be when they grow up, a state that they're going to want to stay in. So for all those reasons, we think this is a very important step forward for the state. We're strongly in support. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I hate to keep going back to the gender identity that you were talking about, gender identity with schools. So now, and I don't claim to know a whole lot about this subject.
Sure.
But if there is a young boy who is stating gender identity, this situation with gender identity,
would that allow him to go into the girls' bathroom?
I think you're going to find that it would not. This bill is about discrimination. And for one thing, this bill doesn't apply directly to the kids. This bill relates to discrimination in employment, workplace, and disability. So it affects our members, but we already have other school policies that deal with that. So this bill has nothing to do with that. But if your question is unrelated to this bill, but a school district policy, they're going to have a policy that makes sure that we respect all of the students. And so there may have to be special accommodations made to make sure that it doesn't create a problem for other students. Well, that's taken care of. And this bill has nothing to do with that directly as it relates to the conduct of the school policy as it relates to the placement of students.
So then if this bill became a law, it wouldn't trump our schools?
Absolutely not. This bill deals with the part of the school community that is the professional learning community, that is the workplace environment and employment.
Further questions? Seeing none,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Check one more time. Any opposition? All right, testimony in support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Ben Burkepper with the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General wants to be on record in strong support of this legislation as he has in the years past.
Attorney General, Attorney General's office.
Attorney General in the office.
Questions? Very likely.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tim Van Zandt, Vice President of Government Public Relations for St. Luke's Health System. We're based in Kansas City. We have 10,000 employees. Here to testify in support of House Bill 407. We're very supportive of it. Included these various protections within our own policies for years and continue to proudly do so. Thank you.
Any questions? Representative Colonna, proceed.
Thank you. You are proof perfect that there is life after membership in this body. A little levity here, so thank you for your service. And I don't know if your hospital is affiliated with any religious group, and quite frankly, I don't care. But thank you for coming down here and time out of your schedule too, where you could be lobbying in another state. But thank you for being here. Thank you for your support.
Question?
No.
Thank you very much. Further testimony in support. Proceed with that.
Mr. Chairman, Greg Porter, registered lobbyist representing the Jackson County Executive's Office for similar testimony that's already been provided. Our jurisdiction has had this on the books since the mid-1990s. Have seen very few claims even used against it. So it certainly hasn't created extra litigation in our county. So just testimony in support.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Further testimony in support.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Alex Eaton representing the ACLU of Missouri. I want to go on record in support of this bill.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Further testimony in support. Proceed when ready.
Thank you very much, committee, for hearing this. Really appreciate you all doing this. Thank you to Representative Weber for being champion on this cause. My name is Jeff Stack. I'm a lobbyist with the Mid-Missouri Fellowship of Reconciliation, and it's an international group that just began its 100th year last month. We were formed in 1961 in Mid-Missouri, and we're a human rights and a social justice group. And our group was founded in part to help deal with segregation in mid-Missouri. So our group was involved in picketing at different facilities. I wasn't around then, but picketing different facilities that were not allowed service to African Americans, bowling alleys, swimming pools, things like that. And this is our current, obviously, civil rights issue and struggle. It's a difficult thing to try to accommodate to. I understand, but we're in a moment of flux, and I'm really proud of this committee for doing this. We have a contrast just in recent weeks what's gone on in Indiana with kind of moral flip-flopping about the discrimination, right to discriminate there with the governor and the legislature. and economics came down to it ultimately. From my perspective, economics is very secondary. This is a human rights issue for our lesbian and gay brothers and sisters, for folks who are dealing with issues of gender identity. It behooves us to show our future generations who we are at this point in time, and I appreciate your time. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the testimony and support. One last chance, any testimony in opposition? Support?
Filling out the form. That's okay. Marlene Hammerman, I'm here representing the National Council of Jewish Women, St. Louis section. We represent 5,000 members and supporters in the state of Missouri. 14 of us are here today on our lobby day, and we did not come really prepared to provide testimony, although we were coming to support this bill. But in listening to the testimony, we felt it imperative because we come with it from a perspective of being members of the Jewish religion that has a long history and brutal history of being discriminated against. And we know what happens when a group is targeted for discrimination. And unfortunately, many of our family and relatives were lost in the Holocaust. Discrimination, in fact, in my lifetime in the 1950s, just on a personal note, driving to Florida, I was witness to a sign that said, "No dogs, no Jews." We have tremendous empathy for any group that is targeted, and we urge you to support MONA, the non-discrimination bill. We think that this is just a moral bill that has to be in the state of Missouri.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much for the testimony and support. Seeing none, any for opposition? Seeing none, any for informational purposes? Seeing none, that will conclude our hearing on House Bill 407. Thank you, Representative. Moving on, we will start our public hearing on House Bill 877. Representative Beard, you may proceed with that.
All right, thank you, Chairman and committee. Really appreciate you taking up these two bills. My short career is the first time it's happened. I really appreciate it. All right, so House Bill 877. This is a bill that addresses spousal maintenance. My understanding, you've heard a couple of these in the past, or at least one. And my bill here, this really addresses an issue. Right now, the statute sits that if you're awarded spousal maintenance or dissolution of marriage, that it automatically terminates in the event that you remarry another. And so what we've seen in practice is that, instead of triggering that automatic termination, some people elect just to cohabitate to try to get around potentially having things terminated. And so what this bill does, it just adds a nice little paragraph there at the end that switches things around so that in the event that you do cohabitate and you're the receiving spouse, that there immediately becomes a rebuttable presumption that there has been a change in circumstances that are substantial and continuing, which would necessitate a modification of the maintenance award. And so it changes that burden of proof so that if you cohabitate, now it's your duty to show why you would still be in need of that. I think this bill really fixes the problem that at least the court in Pettis County has seen, where they couldn't get over that first hurdle to show a change in circumstances just because someone's cohabitating. So that's what this is about. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. Proceedings.
So, No, I have a problem with this bill. Basically, we had a couple of bills that are changing maintenance, the actual number of years you can receive maintenance. And I think that we're, as legislators, basically, don't you think it's kind of difficult to make laws that can control what happens inside of individuals' personal, like, home? I mean, if you say cohabitating, maybe the person that's getting into personal relationships, I think it puts into question, I mean, who's gonna be in charge of determining whether this person is cohabitating, one? And I just think this bill kind of is too broad. It reaches into a person's personal private home. So can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. Well, whenever you have a marriage dissolved, that's exactly what the courts are doing. They're getting right into the middle of family business. And, the judge is using equitable powers to try to do what's best after that marriage is dissolved. And so, yeah, the judge is the one who would do it. A motion to modify would be filed, and the judge then would listen to any new evidence.
But I mean, so basically, give me a real life working example. So if I'm married, go through a divorce, the judge awards maintenance. So after years, I decide to move on with my life, and I, because maybe financial reasons, because sometimes maintenance is not, the end all be all in this marriage.
Right.
I choose to move in with a person of opposite sex because, I don't know if we could call it my boyfriend, but maybe for personal reasons, I have to move in with someone. And then you can basically get a motion to modify saying that maintenance should be cut off because I choose to live with the person of the opposite sex. So we have to go through a hearing on that, basically determine what this relationship would be for me and this person, basically.
Okay, right. So in your hypothetical, I'm ex-husband, you're ex-wife, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Right. So that's what happens. If you choose to remarry, the statute's already clear, it automatically terminates. If you choose, instead of remarrying, to simply cohabitate, then yes, I could file a motion to modify, and then it would be your burden to prove why there is no presumption that you're still in need of maintenance, and then you'd explain it. So, if you moved in with your dad, a piece of cake, I mean, you're
But what if
in
I
there.
move in with a friend and you're gonna say it's
Right.
this is cohabitation, but I'm like, this is just my friend.
Right, so really all this bill does, it just switches the burden of proof. So now your ex-husband isn't scrounging to try to find the evidence. It would be your burden to prove that you're still in need. And so you just lay the evidence before the court and show that you're still in need, and nothing happens.
You don't think this opens the door to frivolous claims that between even the wife or the husband, because women can now, women can make more money than men, and this kind of opens the doors, and we're gonna have a domestic relations person expert who does these kind of cases that basically can tell you that there are a lot of claims made by either party that can draw, and cost the courts time and money, cost people time and money. We're gonna open up more cases in the court clock systems. I don't think this is effective piece of legislation in terms of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative, proceed.
Thank you. I'm going to say, actually, and I know not everybody will agree with me on this, but I do appreciate having a dialogue about this because I've represented clients on both sides of this. My hope would be that this really starts a good dialogue about some things that we probably can massage. My question for you, though, is sort of one of my concerns, and maybe you can help me answer this because I know this is an area in which you practice as well, is how do you prove the negative of the lack of a romantic relationship? Because it's really what we're trying to get to. You know what I'm saying? And how does one, if I'm representing the recipient of a spousal support who is living with somebody of opposite gender, how do I prove that that is not a relationship that should warrant the inclusion of income for the purposes of that award? That's my problem. is
Right.
How do you prove a negative? How do I prove to a court we're not sleeping together? That's my concern.
Sure. Well, so if you look at it the opposite way, it's always been the husband's burden to prove that to begin with. So if you're living together, we're going to put it onto the receiving spouse. I mean, that seems to be the most fair way to do it. And yeah, it's difficult to prove. It's difficult to prove right now for those paying spouses. Right. So this really puts the burden on the one who has all the information. So if it is, the receiving spouse is doing this, then she's got all the information, or he, and they can supply it.
And I guess my hope is that maybe we could try and find some factors, or, you know what I'm saying, and I hope that you would be amenable to amendments or some way to find maybe some things, some direction for the court as opposed to just shifting the burden, because that's been kind of my concern. And I guess an equal concern, and frankly, I know many people that have had this happen where they have ended their marriage in order to pursue same-sex relationships. And that creates its own other Pandora's box in this regard. So if I was an obligor paying spousal support to someone that had left the marriage in order to engage in a same-sex relationship that they can't remarry, we're not really addressing that potential issue as well. And I've had that, I have friends that have had that happen, and I've also actually come across similar circumstances as an attorney. So that would be my hope, is that there might be some, maybe, again, I would like to see, and I'm curious to know where the bar would be or other family law practitioners about maybe trying to find some factors, because in a weird way, you're absolutely right that trying to prove that somebody's together is difficult. But so far, I mean, I have been able to find, you're going to find the Facebook picture, you're going to have the kids be able to testify they see mommy kissing so or daddy kissing so and so. There's usually, or to at least get a GAL, you know what I'm saying? There's usually some way to get some evidence about that. Not always, and I have had those cases as well. So I would hope that you'd be agreeable to at least continue to work and see this as a little work in progress. That's okay.
Well, if you have some good ideas, let me know.
I have lots of ideas, whether or not they're good. I'm always open to debate.
Thank you very much, Representative
McCall. I think I like where you're going, much like what Representative Minton said, probably needs a little massaging. You're not wanting to take the discretion away from the judge to make the determination first and foremost, is that correct?
Right.
Last year, we passed some legislation, like no contest clause in will, where the ability of the heirs to challenge that, it will be an expedited process the judge would basically make the determination on the merits of the petition. And I think with Representative Minton's, how do you prove, if you in the court that there's a change of circumstances, and they answer back and basically say, we aren't cohabitating. You think you would be willing maybe it would be an expedited process where there would be a hearing, the judge would make the determination just on the merits of the petition and the answer. I guess in a motion to modify, you don't technically have to file an answer though.
We'll get to that in just a moment. That's my other bill.
So.
Thank you very much.
What are you really, if everyone's in agreement?
Would you be willing, kind of.
Well, yeah.
Be willing to do that.
It goes easily.
Or let the judge make the determination without having a hearing based upon.
The pleadings?
Right.
Well, that's already kind of the case. I mean, if they come back and admit they're cohabitating and they don't,
I'm saying what Representative Minton's saying is how do you prove the negative? I think that you give the judge the ability to say, if they come back and their answer to the pleadings say, we're not cohabitating, there's no sexual relationship, that drops it right there. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I don't see a problem. That's kind of what happened in these cases. I mean, you could even.
If you file the answer saying you're not, then you've got a contempt action. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of talking out loud, but.
I'm sorry.
I think if I could.
Would you like that?
Well, it might be nice if maybe I'm not understanding what you're trying to say. Can you
talk offline?
I'm just trying to tell you, I like what you're doing, and I would like to help you, and I think Representative as well. It's better than what we've heard.
Thank you very much for the questions. Seeing none, any testimony in support? Seeing none, any testimony in opposition? Proceed when ready.
Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Colin Coble with Missouri Coalition Against Domestic Sexual Violence, just to echo some of the issues that have been raised. There are those who have received maintenance in a divorce settlement who are victims of domestic violence, who move in with males with whom they do not have an intimate relationship for issues of safety, for issues of economy, or for issues of family. Brothers, cousins, fathers, friends, co-workers, a broad range. And so our opposition is centered on the unintended consequence to those who are perhaps going to be affected and have costs related to cases when that does not appear to be the intent.
Thank you. Any questions, Representative Garner?
Just briefly, you know, like you said, just a portion of it is domestic violence, and like I was trying to elaborate, you know, this could be used to basically, you know, I know in divorces they get messy, specifically in domestic violence, harass a person. This could be used to try to figure out where these people are living, you know, and so that's the problem I have. You know, it's you know, this can be used both ways to basically harm a person who basically uses the court system against that person who they feel they can intimidate. And I think that's why I think this is a bad bill. I think that we can craft rules, and you can have answer this. Do you think even with crafting some specifications in terms of cohabitation, I think that gets into the private person's personal life? I mean, I think that we have clear laws if you get remarried, that maintenance is cut off, but I think you're putting to harm people who are in serious, dangerous relationships. Can you speak to that?
The larger context of maintenance as a legal issue and an award is, based on your perspective, is this a recognition of contribution to the marital unit and a financial continuation of contributions to that? So does that continue regardless of your subsequent relationships, be they intimate partners or not? Or is your subsequent entering into a relationship with another person the end of your right to previous contributions in a previous marriage? It's all bound in that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Please be sure to file the witness one further testimony in opposition. Any testimony for informational purposes? Seeing none, that will conclude our hearing on House Bill 877. I'm actually going to jump, though. I know we got a few prosecutors here for House Bill 1220. Representative Austin, proceed with that.
And I'll be very, very quick. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for hearing this. I'm Kevin Austin, District 136, Greene County. Briefly, we have a statute in place where year, the Missouri voters passed an amendment amending Article 1, Section 23. Two parts of that was that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed or shall be subject to strict scrutiny. The other part is that it says that this is not to be construed to prevent the General Assembly from enacting general laws which limit the rights of convicted violent felons. So we had a judge in St. Louis Circuit Court pursuant to a motion to dismiss of a information for felony and possession charge, and sustain that motion to dismiss and citing this statute, which is 571070, as unconstitutional as applied to this particular defendant. Out of concern that we now will be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. By that I mean we'll now be having rulings where all felons in possession of firearms it is permissible. It's no longer against the law. I filed this bill to 1220. Designating or defining violent felons, and we were butting up against a deadline, so I filed it in a hurry. To be honest with you, put it together in a hurry. Certainly looking for input from, I know there's prosecutors here who I've talked with before, looking for input from them and from anybody else. So basically what I do is define violent felons.
And I don't care if you answer this or one of the witnesses who want to testify. The only question in my mind is, if we've had a judge rule that the old statute is unconstitutional and unenforceable because of what we passed, I want to hear the argument on why whatever we do is still not unconstitutional.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and it's Judge Durker that had the order. Yeah, Durker. Thank you. And that is being appealed, so I guess, the question also is, do we wait to hear what the Supreme Court says or not? The decision going forward this bill is not because of the public safety issue right now. So what is overbroad, as far as constitutional? I mean, I kind of want to push the envelope as to what is a quote violent felon, and let them, I guess, pluck away at it if they so desire.
Okay, thank you. Representative Marshall, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you do any statutory searches to see if we have it previously defined in statute?
We did, and the only thing I find was there was reference to a violent felon.
Right.
They didn't have a definition. They didn't give us a good laundry list of what that was, and I forgot where I saw that. It's actually Chair who pointed that out to me. So I went with the definition of dangerous felon,
right,
and used that definition. And like I said, it's subject to change, but I wanted to bring that before you today.
Right. So that term is not defined in.
I didn't find
Okay.
it defined.
I think you're right. Dangerous is, I'll do some, here's the problem. I think what the court's going to do is they're going to, if it hadn't been previously defined, they're going to use the common definition in the English language for violent felony. It's going to be a violent, or it's going to be a felony, it's going to be something violent. My only concern is with your bill, from what I'm seeing that you're including, some of those things, they're horrible, but I don't know that they're violent. So you kind of see what.
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean,
I want your not be squashed.
we don't want to be doing this again next year.
Right, exactly.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none. Any testimony in support of House Bill 1220?
Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, my name is Ron Calzone. I am a businessman, a rancher, and also one of the directors of Missouri First, a constitutional think tank. I want to give a little bit more background about this issue. The case that referenced by the sponsor is not the only case in which someone who had committed a nonviolent felon has been acquitted by a circuit court based on the statute. Last spring, and forgive me, I don't have the case number or specific details. I can get them if you're interested. But last spring, a circuit judge acquitted someone who was convicted of a nonviolent felon about 10 years prior, and said that this statute was overreaching before Amendment 5 passed. So we have now a case in recent history in which, with or without Amendment 5, a court has said that this is too broad of a statute. The first case is in the Supreme Court right now, and it's taking them a while to decide on it. So we may know. Do you remember the case name?
I thought they had it on a writ, but I'm not. Don't hold me to that. So.
But anyway, the point is that there are two cases that are advancing to some extent. And with respect to the history of the definition, in 2008, House Bill 2034, sponsored by then Representative Munzlinger, was a pretty simple bill. It was designed to give some tort protection to people who own hunting preserves or target ranges and try to protect them from nuisance lawsuits over the noise. And as is prone to happen in this building, it ended up being a repository for a lot of other stuff. A lot of law took place, including some brackets. And the brackets took out some language that made a distinction between a dangerous felon and other felons. The dangerous felon was treated differently than someone who, for instance, committed a felony by importing an orchid, which is a felony. And so up until 2008, Missouri statute did basically what this bill does. And the sky didn't fall. And so, and to answer Representative Colonna's question about why will the courts think that this solves the problem, is because Amendment 5 specifically makes a distinction between violent felons and all other felons. And the statute currently doesn't. This bill reinstates that distinction. So since Missouri statute will no longer be overreaching, using the exact same language, wisely to use the word violent rather than dangerous as was in previous statute. So what we had prior to 2008 was, to my knowledge, it was never found unconstitutional. It made what I think is a more just distinction between dangerous and other types of felons or violent other types of felons.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the testimony and support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whitney O'Daniel, National Rifle Association. Here simply to support the bill for clarification so we can move forward dealing with Amendment 5.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the testimony and support.
Professor with Missouri Family Network, and also today with Missourians for Personal Safety. Those of us in the gun community also agree with the representative and appreciate you all considering this.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the testimony and support. Seeing none, testimony in opposition. Seeing none, any for informational purposes. See when ready.
Chairman and members of the committee, thank you. My name is Bob McCullough. I'm the prosecuting attorney for St. Louis County. I'm the co-chair of the legislative committee of the Missouri Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. We are here today for informational purposes. I think Representative Austin laid it out very well that this is a bill that was put together to address an issue. And my concern, our concern right now is we're not exactly sure what that issue is, and that's the problem. There's been talk of dangerous felons, but the definition is actually dangerous felonies, not dangerous felons. So those are defined, you know, they originally start off as 7 deadly sins. The concern we have right now is there are at least 4 cases that are working their way through the system to the Supreme Court. A couple of them are there. There are a couple more on the way, and there are likely to be more cases as currently a number of courts are holding these cases sort of in abeyance right now to see what happens with the Supreme Court. So our concern is that whatever changes are made right now, this legislative session, will become the law, but we don't know what the Supreme Court is going to say. The Supreme Court may very well say, no, this law, as it reads right now, is just fine. It is not violative. It defines it. It doesn't violate this provision of the Constitution. So the law as it exists right now is just fine. They may say that, Judge Durker said it's unconstitutional as applied. They can certainly say it's just unconstitutional and doesn't pass the strict scrutiny, or they can say anything in between. And the concern is that whatever they end up saying, we'll likely be back again next year addressing the issue. So the concern is right now that anything that passes this year, that it be as broad as everybody's comfortable with, so that we don't exclude felonies. Because if we talk about a violent felon, there's also that question as to whether that refers to the case for which that individual is charged right now. Is he a violent felon because he's charged with assault? Or is he a violent felon because he has a history of prior assaultive conduct or violent crimes in his past? Right now, he's got a gun on him and nothing else. But he's got a prior conviction for assault, for shooting somebody. So does that make him a violent felon? And that's the issue that one of the issues, there's no definition of that right now. So I think all of those are just concerns that really need to be addressed in the legislation. I'm very mindful of that legislation and concerned that anything that comes out of here, again, will be the law regardless of what, perhaps regardless, I should say, of what the Supreme Court says.
Any questions? Representative Marshall, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you think of any prior cases in which the legislature was able to define a constitutional term and thereby control the court's interpretation of that constitutional term? Because as I understand, the problem is we have amended the Constitution to include this term violent felon or violent felony, and now we add on to the fact that
we've come back in a session up the stairs, so we have to stand at ease. We'll come back.
I'll look while you're.
We have to stand at ease because they have gone back in upstairs. So once I know where we'll be at, then I'll make an announcement on the House floor. Thank you.
But yeah. Not unless.
How are you?
So how can?
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
You have an election. Where's my attorney? I do.